When someone says, I don't like having visitors, the world often interprets it as antisocial, cold, or standoffish. But in reality, it usually speaks to something much deeper about the soul. The truth is, solitude is one of the most powerful mirrors you can hold up to yourself. When you sit alone without the constant presence of others, you begin to hear the voice of your own heart in ways that are drowned out by endless chatter and social noise. Your dislike of constant visitors isn't about rejecting people, it's about protecting the space where your soul can breathe freely. Think about how many people fill their lives with busyness, with guests, with constant entertainment, just to avoid silence. They're not comfortable sitting with themselves because when they do, the unresolved thoughts, the emotions, and the questions they buried start to rise to the surface. But when you're at peace with being alone, it shows that your soul is in tune with itself. You don't need distractions to define you. You don't need the outside world to tell you who you are. Solitude gives you the chance to actually meet yourself, to look inward and ask, what do I want? What do I need? What truly matters to me? When you choose to avoid unnecessary visitors, it's often because you instinctively know that your energy is precious. Every person who enters your space carries their own vibrations, their own moods, their own baggage. And if you constantly allow people into your environment, those energies mix with yours. If you're sensitive, you feel it more intensely, the restlessness, the heaviness, or even the drama that certain people can bring. By limiting that access, you're not isolating yourself, you're honoring yourself. Your home, your time, and your soul deserve to be protected from anything that doesn't align with peace. What's powerful about this is that solitude teaches you to draw strength from within. Many people can only feel alive when they're surrounded by others, when someone is validating them, when someone is entertaining them. But when you're comfortable being alone, it means you've tapped into a source that doesn't run out. You've learned how to generate your own joy, your own calm, your own sense of purpose. That's why you don't crave constant visitors. Your soul already feels nourished in the silence. This doesn't mean you hate people. It doesn't mean you'll never enjoy company. It simply means that you value depth over noise. You'd rather spend an evening reflecting, reading, creating, or just being in peace than entertaining people whose presence doesn't feed your spirit. And when you do choose to let someone into your space, it's intentional. It's because you see value in that connection. Your selectivity speaks louder than words. It says, my energy, my time, my space are sacred, and I won't just give them away for the sake of appearances. In a world that constantly demands us to be available, to be social, to be endlessly connected, the courage to embrace solitude reveals a soul that is strong, grounded, and deeply aligned. Not liking visitors doesn't make you strange, it makes you aware. Aware of the fact that your soul thrives best when it has room to reflect, to recharge, and to grow without unnecessary interruption. And sometimes it's in the silence of solitude where you hear the most important truths about yourself and your life. When you say you don't like having visitors, it may not be about disliking people. It's often about protecting your energy. Your soul is naturally wired to sense when something or someone disrupts your peace. And the truth is, not every presence in your space is neutral. Some people bring calm, positivity, and comfort, but others bring tension, gossip, judgment, or negativity. And the more sensitive and self aware you become, the less tolerance your soul has for unnecessary disturbances. Wanting to keep visitors at a distance isn't cold, it's wisdom. It shows that you've recognized your inner balance is more valuable than pleasing everyone else. Your energy is your life force. It's the invisible field that surrounds you, shapes your moods, influences your thoughts, and drives your ability to focus and create. When the wrong person steps into your environment, you can feel it instantly. Maybe they walk in with heavy complaints, or they're restless and chaotic, or they simply take more than they give. When that happens, your soul reacts. You may feel drained after just an hour in their presence. You may notice your thoughts are more cluttered, your body feels tense, or your motivation disappears. That's not random. That's your spirit telling you protect this energy. This is why many people who are highly self aware or purpose driven don't enjoy constant visitors. They know that every time they open their doors, they're also opening their energy field, and not everyone deserves that access. It's not about being selfish, it's about being selective. You wouldn't leave your front door wide open for strangers to walk in and out of your home without boundaries. So, why would you let just anyone walk into your soul? When you guard your energy, you also give yourself the chance to stay consistent in your growth. Visitors often interrupt more than your space, they interrupt your flow. You might be in the middle of working on your craft, reflecting on your goals, or simply enjoying peace when a knock on the door shifts everything. Suddenly, you're pulled into conversations that don't add value or into situations that feel obligatory rather than meaningful. And when this happens too often, you start to notice how much of your time and energy is being stolen from the things that truly matter to your soul. But here's the part that many people misunderstand: protecting your energy isn't about rejecting love or connection. In fact, it's the opposite. By being mindful of who you allow into your space, you're actually preserving yourself so you can show up fully and authentically with the people who deserve you. When you're not constantly drained by shallow interactions, you have more patience, more depth, and more sincerity to give to the right relationships. Your soul isn't saying, I don't need anyone. It's saying, I need the right ones, and until then, I choose peace. The truth is, your dislike for constant visitors often reflects that you've outgrown the need for constant stimulation. You've learned that silence is more healing than small talk. You've realized that not everyone's energy matches the frequency you're striving to live on, and you've chosen to prioritize your inner well being over external expectations. That's not a weakness, it's one of the greatest signs of strength. At the end of the day, protecting your energy is protecting your soul, and sometimes that means choosing solitude over company that doesn't serve you. When you don't like having visitors, it often reveals something powerful about your inner world. It shows independence and inner fulfillment. Most people rely heavily on external validation to feel good about themselves. They constantly want people around, conversations happening, and activities filling their calendar because silence makes them feel uneasy. They measure their worth by how many friends they have, how busy they appear, or how often their phone rings. But when your soul is content without visitors, it's because you've tapped into a different kind of strength, the ability to be fulfilled from within. This independence is not about rejecting others, it's about not needing them to define you. When you're comfortable with solitude, you begin to realize that your value isn't tied to how many people are in your life at any given moment. You don't need external noise to feel important because you've cultivated inner peace and purpose. And when a person reaches that level of self sufficiency, they stop chasing shallow interactions. Instead, they focus on the kind of connections that truly resonate with their spirit. Think about it. The most powerful people in history, the thinkers, creators, and visionaries, all valued solitude. Why? Because solitude sharpened their clarity. It gave them space to reflect, to create, to dream, and to listen to the quiet voice inside them. If your soul isn't eager to constantly have visitors, it may be because you're more focused on inner work, building something, reflecting on who you are, or aligning yourself with your true path rather than entertaining people just to pass the time. Independence also means freedom. When you don't rely on constant social activity to feel alive, you're free from the trap of dependency. Some people panic when they're alone because it forces them to sit with themselves. But if you can sit in silence and still feel complete, that shows a deeper level of spiritual maturity. It means your joy doesn't come from outside, it flows from within. And that's something nobody can take away from you. This kind of fulfillment also changes the way you show up in relationships. Instead of needing people to complete you, you choose to connect with them out of genuine desire, not desperation. You no longer entertain fake friendships because your happiness doesn't depend on keeping up appearances. You're not afraid to say no to invitations or to close your doors when your energy needs rest because your worth isn't tied to how much you socialize. That's why people who dislike constant visitors often have stronger, healthier, and more authentic relationships. They don't cling, they connect. They don't seek validation, they seek depth. Your independence also creates a sense of mystery. When you're not always available, when you're not always surrounded by people, you stand out. Others begin to notice your calm, your confidence, and your ability to be content in your own company. It confuses those who can't imagine life without constant social validation. They wonder why you don't need the same things they do, and that curiosity often draws them to you. In that way, your independence becomes magnetic. At its core, disliking frequent visitors often shows that your soul is strong enough to stand alone, peaceful enough to sit in silence, and fulfilled enough to generate joy without external stimulation. That's not loneliness, it's liberation. And when you live from that place, you no longer chase what the world tries to offer. You simply attract what aligns with your soul. When you don't like having visitors, it often says something profound about your standards and boundaries. It's not that you dislike people or that you're trying to isolate yourself. It's that you've recognized not everyone deserves full access to your inner world. Your home, your space, and your presence are sacred. When someone steps into that space, they're not just entering your physical environment, they're stepping into your energy field, your sanctuary, your most vulnerable zone. And when your soul resists constant visitors, it's often because you've developed a sense of selectivity that reflects self respect. Selectivity is not about arrogance, it's about discernment. It means you've realized that quality matters more than quantity when it comes to human connection. You'd rather have a handful of genuine, uplifting, and supportive people around you than a crowd of shallow acquaintances. And when you've reached that point, you begin to guard your space carefully. You don't open your doors to anyone who just shows up, you open them to people whose presence adds value, peace, and inspiration to your life. This mindset can confuse people who live without boundaries. They might think you're antisocial, distant, or even cold. But what they don't realize is that your standards are a reflection of your growth. You no longer feel the need to tolerate energy that doesn't align with you. You don't welcome gossip, drama, or negativity into your space. You don't feel obligated to entertain people who don't respect your time or your journey. And that level of selectivity isn't weakness, it's power. It means you've chosen self preservation over people pleasing. Think about how many people compromise their peace by saying yes when they should say no. They let visitors linger in their lives because they're afraid of seeming rude or unfriendly. But every time they do that, they chip away at their own sense of balance. They get drained, distracted, and sometimes even resentful. Now compare that to someone who values their space enough to set clear boundaries. They may not have constant company, but when they do, it's meaningful, intentional, and fulfilling. That's the difference standards make. And here's the deeper truth: when you become selective with your space, you also become selective with your soul. You stop entertaining relationships that are built on convenience instead of authenticity. You no longer chase attention because you realize not all attention is worth having. You start filtering out what doesn't serve your higher purpose. This refinement is what shapes strong character and protects your spirit from unnecessary harm. What's more, when you raise your standards, you naturally raise the quality of your relationships. People know that being allowed into your world is a privilege, not a right. And because of that, they show up with more respect, more effort, and more sincerity. They know they can't just take, they must also give. Your selectivity teaches people how to treat you, and it creates a dynamic where mutual respect and value are the foundation of every connection. So when you say you don't like having visitors, what it really reveals is that your soul has matured to a place where you don't tolerate anything that lowers your vibration. You're not afraid to protect your sanctuary. You're not afraid to demand depth over superficiality. And in doing so, you send a clear message. Not everyone gets a seat at your table, and that's exactly how it should be. At the end of the day, your boundaries are not walls to keep people out, but filters to let the right ones in. Sometimes when you say you don't like having visitors, it's not that you dislike people altogether, it's that your soul craves something deeper than what most interactions provide. You're not rejecting connection, you're rejecting shallowness. You're not avoiding company, you're avoiding meaningless conversations that leave you feeling empty instead of nourished. This is why certain people feel drained after constant socializing. It's not the presence of others that exhausts them, it's the lack of authenticity in those interactions. Your soul, in its quiet wisdom, knows that surface level chatter doesn't feed your spirit. Talking about trivial things, gossiping, or endlessly filling time with noise doesn't bring peace, it creates more emptiness. That's why you'd rather be alone than surrounded by people who don't touch you on a deeper level. Solitude becomes more fulfilling than company that fails to connect with your heart. And this distinction is something only people who value authenticity will understand. When you realize this, you begin to see that not all relationships are created equal. There are people who come into your life simply to pass time, and then there are those rare souls who bring clarity, inspiration, and meaning. The ones who make you feel understood without judgment, who listen without trying to control, who share without trying to impress. These are the people your soul longs for, the ones who give you depth instead of distraction. And until you find those people, you'd rather choose your own company, because at least that solitude is honest. This craving for deeper connections often shows up as a kind of restlessness around shallow interactions. You might notice yourself zoning out during conversations that don't matter. You might feel uneasy when surrounded by people who only talk about appearances, money, or other people's business. That unease is your soul telling you, this is not what I need. It's not about being too serious or too critical. It's about recognizing that life is too short to waste on relationships that don't elevate you. It's also why people who dislike constant visitors often have fewer but stronger relationships. They may not have a crowded house, but the bonds they do nurture are solid, authentic, and nourishing. They prefer meaningful conversations late at night over meaningless chatter at a crowded party. They'd rather share silence with someone who truly understands them than laugh loudly with people who don't even see who they really are. Their connections are built on trust, truth, and vulnerability, not convenience. And here's the beautiful part: when you hold out for depth, you inspire others to rise to it. People notice that you're not impressed by empty words or superficial gestures. They realize they have to show up with authenticity if they want a place in your life. This sets a new standard not just for you, but for the people around you. By craving deeper bonds, you create an environment where honesty, openness, and love thrive naturally. So when you don't like having visitors, it may not mean you're antisocial or cold. It may simply mean your soul refuses to settle for shallow. You're waiting for connections that feel real, conversations that feel alive, and relationships that leave your heart fuller, not emptier. That isn't rejection of people, it's a higher form of love, one that refuses to waste itself on what doesn't matter. In the end, your longing for depth is proof that your soul values truth more than distraction, and that's a rare and powerful gift. When you find yourself preferring solitude over constant visitors, it often means your soul is entering a season of alignment. It's not about pushing people away or building walls. It's about giving yourself the space to grow, to listen, and to reconnect with your higher purpose. Sometimes the silence you crave is not loneliness, it's preparation. It's your inner world calling you to realign with what truly matters so that when you do step out and interact with others, you do so from a place of strength and clarity rather than neediness or distraction. Think about how easy it is to lose yourself in the noise of constant company. When people are always around, talking, sharing their problems, or filling your time with their energy, it becomes harder to hear your own voice. You begin to absorb their moods, their dramas, their agendas, until one day you can't tell what you truly feel or want anymore. This is why your soul sometimes shuts the door on visitors. It's a way of reclaiming your own frequency. In that quiet space, you can finally think clearly, process your emotions, and remember who you really are without the constant interference of other people's noise. This is also where purpose is born. When you spend time alone, you're able to ask yourself the deeper questions: what am I really doing with my life? What brings me joy? What drains me? What kind of relationships do I want to build? These are questions you can't answer if you're always distracted by external chatter. Solitude becomes the soil in which clarity grows. And when you gain that clarity, you're no longer at the mercy of other people's opinions or expectations. You begin to move with intention, aligning your actions with your true purpose instead of trying to fit into the noise of the crowd. Many of the world's strongest, most centered people are those who embrace this truth. They understood that growth requires retreat, that wisdom requires silence, and that transformation requires space. They weren't afraid to step back from constant socializing to strengthen their inner foundation. And when they did step back into the world, they carried themselves differently, more grounded, more secure, and more powerful. People sense the shift, even without words. That's what alignment does. It changes your presence before it changes your circumstances. And here's the interesting part: when you realign with your purpose in solitude, the way you interact with others also transforms. You stop engaging in shallow or energy draining dynamics. You stop letting people waste your time. You stop needing approval because your approval of yourself becomes enough. Suddenly, when you do open your doors to visitors, it's not out of obligation, it's out of choice. And that choice is empowered. You welcome people into your life not because you're afraid of being alone, but because you genuinely want to share your energy with them. That shift alone changes the entire dynamic of your relationships. Your boundaries become clearer, your standards become higher, and your soul becomes stronger. This is why pulling back from constant visitors isn't a weakness, it's a stage of preparation. You're gathering yourself, sharpening your clarity, and strengthening your spirit. And when that process is complete, you emerge with a presence that others can't ignore. They may not understand why, but they'll feel it. Your energy is different, your purpose is clear, and your soul is aligned. So when you don't like having visitors, it often means your soul is simply telling you it's time to grow. It's a sacred season, not a flaw. It's a moment of preparation for the next level of your life. And when you honor that season, you'll find that the people who do enter your life will meet a version of you that is stronger, clearer, and more aligned than ever before.